Everywhere we walk, we are surrounded by something we cannot see. Invisible signals travel silently through the air, carrying voices, images, and endless streams of data. They move through walls, through our homes, and even through our bodies without resistance. Pause for a moment and imagine standing in a city street at night. Neon lights flicker, traffic hums, people talk on their phones, and above all of that lies a silent symphony of electromagnetic waves. They are not visible, but they are everywhere. We depend on them. They keep us connected, entertained, and informed. And yet, for as long as these waves have existed in our lives, a question has lingered in the back of our minds. Could this invisible world that we rely on so deeply also be harming us? This is the story of fear, of science, of doubt, and reassurance. It is the story of electromagnetic pollution, and it begins long before smartphones were even imagined. In the early days of radio and telecommunication, towers began to rise above neighborhoods. They stood as proud symbols of progress. But at the same time, whispers began to spread. What exactly were these strange towers emitting? Was it safe to live near them? By the time mobile phones arrived, the conversation grew louder. People held these new devices right next to their heads. Unlike a tower, which might be across the street, the phone was pressed against the skull. Could this proximity make them dangerous? Newspapers seized the story. Headlines warned of possible links to cancer. Parents worried about their children. Schools debated the presence of Wi-Fi. Even some governments commissioned studies to find out the truth. A simple invention that brought people closer together also created a new sense of anxiety. Science is rarely quick. It requires time, patience, and repetition. Dozens of research teams across the world set out to answer the question, are these invisible waves harmful? They placed lab animals near strong electromagnetic fields. They studied brain activity in volunteers using phones for hours. They searched for mutations in cells exposed to radio waves. For decades, these experiments continued. What emerged was not a single dramatic discovery, but a slow and steady pattern. At typical levels, the same levels we encounter daily through phones and Wi-Fi, the evidence did not point to lasting harm. The type of radiation emitted is non-ionizing. That means it does not have the energy to damage DNA in the way X-rays or ultraviolet rays can. Still, every time a new study appeared, the media would seize the most alarming phrase, possibly linked. Needs further study. Public concern stayed alive. The story of electromagnetic fields became a tug-of-war between scientific reassurance and human fear. To truly grasp the story, we need to understand what electromagnetic radiation actually is. On one end of the spectrum, we have the dangerous forms of radiation: X-rays, gamma rays, and ultraviolet light. These have the power to knock apart molecules, to break DNA strands, to cause mutations. That is why doctors limit your X-ray exposure and why we apply sunscreen against ultraviolet light. On the other end lies radio waves, microwaves, and the frequencies used by phones and Wi-Fi. These are gentle. They cannot shatter molecules. At high intensities, they can cause heating. That is how a microwave oven works. But the intensity from a phone in your pocket is millions of times weaker. Regulations exist for this very reason. Devices must comply with strict exposure limits to ensure they stay far below the threshold where heating effects could even begin. The invisible world we live in is not chaotic. It is carefully measured and controlled. If the science is so reassuring, why does fear still persist? Part of the answer lies in the way humans react to uncertainty. When we cannot see a threat, we imagine it might be larger than it is. Another part lies in how information spreads. A headline warning of possible cancer risk attracts more attention than one quietly reporting no harm detected. There is also history. Asbestos was once thought harmless. Smoking was once promoted as healthy. People fear that history might repeat itself, that perhaps the truth will only be revealed decades later. This memory of past mistakes makes us cautious, even when science is more careful today. So the fear is not irrational. It comes from a desire to protect ourselves and our families. But it is a fear that often outweighs the actual risk. Even with reassurance, many people prefer to take simple precautions. They use speaker mode instead of holding the phone to their ear. They place their devices away from their bedside while sleeping. They choose wired headsets or limit their children's screen time. These actions are not harmful. They provide peace of mind, and in some cases, they may even improve lifestyle. Less phone time often means more time spent outdoors, more time in conversation, more time resting. So while the science says exposure is safe, personal choices can still create balance. As we focus on invisible waves, it is important not to lose sight of the other challenges technology brings. Excessive screen time affects sleep cycles. Constant notifications increase stress. Online dependence impacts mental health. Ironically, the dangers of technology often do not come from the radiation itself, but from the way we use the devices. It is not the invisible wave that drains us, but the endless scroll, the constant pressure to respond, the lack of pause. The story of electromagnetic pollution is not a tale of silent poison. It is a tale of human perception. We are surrounded by forces we cannot see, and that absence of visibility makes us uneasy. But when we look through the lens of science, the story changes. These waves are not our enemy. They are the reason you can call loved ones from across the ocean. The reason medical data travels instantly. The reason communities stay connected in times of crisis. Our responsibility is not to fear them, but to use them wisely. To balance technology with presence. To separate fact from alarm. And to remember that not all invisible forces are threats. Some are bridges, connecting us in ways the generations before us could only dream of. As you set your phone down after this video, remember this invisible world is here to stay. The question is not whether it harms us, but how we choose to live with it.